our fourth type of language. And so you can see that there are these four kinds. You've got the analytic or isolating language. And then you have agglutinative languages like Swahili, or Turkish is another one of those. Then fusional, they're called polysynthetic languages. And so that's our fourth type of language. And so you can see that there are these four kinds. You've got the analytic or isolating languages, and then you have agglutinative languages like Swahili, or Turkish is another one of those. Then fusional, which is our familiar sort of English, Spanish, German, and then you have polysynthetic languages such as Chinook and many others. The person who subdivided languages into that typology, that classificational system, was Wilhelm von Humboldt, and he was Prussian, and he did this work during his life, which straddled the 18th and the 19th centuries. He was one of those polymaths, so typical in that era when there wasn't quite as much to know as there is for us now. He was a diplomat, and then he was an education minister, and he meant it. There were people who knew him mostly for his work in that area. And then he was also a linguist, and a serious one who did very important and wide-ranging work. And he came up with this typology, noticing that morphemes were handled differently in different kinds of languages, and you could classify how this worked. And he saw that you could see a clinal relationship between the four. And so, of course, naturally, you might imagine that there are free morphemes, and then time goes by, they start being run together as things tend to be, as we'll see in some later lectures about how languages develop, called historical linguistics. And that, in terms of how a polysynthetic language arises in the first place, is almost certainly true. But von Humboldt had a propensity for looking at things like this as a matter of human mental sophistication. And of course, this was not uncommon in his era. This was a time when subjective and often rather aristocratic judgments, ethnocentric judgments of those kinds, were more common in scientific work than they are now. Of course, we do not do our scientific work today with no biases, but here was a time when, for example, Carl Linnaeus, when he was formulating how we classify animals and plants with Latin names, would often give something a name that meant as if he were doing an English ugliest, just because he found it an unpleasant-looking creature, as if somehow in the eyes of a higher being, these creatures are undesirable because they don't fall well upon his eye. In the same way, von Humboldt had the idea that fusional languages were the best kind. And wouldn't you know that German is a fusional language? And his idea was that fusional languages were best because, quote unquote, such languages earnestly endeavor to unite every particular into the sentence